Welcome to Planet Capable. Join Mike, Alex, Lee, and Gwen, along with a myriad of special guests, as we discuss topics and issues of importance to the disabled community worldwide. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of Planet Capable. I'm Mike Rogers.
I'm Alex Shesko.
Hi, everyone. This is Lee Hartley.
All right. Today we're going to talk about some questions that were posed to educators about what they would like people with disabilities and those who support them to know about living life.
Mm-hmm. So I wrote a post on Reddit to a variety of special ed teachers, and I basically asked them the question, what would you like people with disabilities to know about living in life? And the responses were really good, I have to say, for the most part, and we're going to talk about that. So the very first comment was, just because someone with a disability seems like they can get by, quote unquote, without given support doesn't mean they don't need it. People are so afraid of looking disabled. This is true for the person with the disability themselves, but also too often and infuriatingly, the parent or teacher. This causes kids with learning differences not to use their accommodations like read aloud or their graphic organizer and get lower grades. This causes kids with sensory differences not to use their tools like ear defenders or fidgets and spend all day dysregulated. This causes kids with physical disabilities to try to minimize use of their mobility aids if they can move a little bit without them and risk injuries from falls or excess fatigue later. Stigma won't change until more people use these tools. Parents and educators, in particular, need to encourage kids to use what will help them. So that was the first comment.
In thinking about this, Alex, when we think about stigma first starts with the person that's being stigmatized, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always go back to the idea for people of being proud of your disability. People think of disability as bad,
Right.
or I, you know, like I don't know how else I would say it other than like maybe a parent having survivor's guilt over their child having struggles.
Right.
Everybody has struggles in life, and I'm not saying you just take the disability down to a level that you say, oh, to me, disability doesn't ever exist or challenges don't ever exist. But to me, it's just part of who I am. And I think when we can get to that level as a society where people with disabilities are proud of who they are, proud of what they can achieve instead of trying to evade it or their parents trying to go, well, I don't want my child to be considered different. Why not? We're all different in life.
Right.
Why should this difference be any more bad than any other difference?
Right.
And I think that's what for this commenter, I think that's what's really at the bottom of all of this is that they don't want to use the tools because then they would have to admit they have the challenge.
Right.
And same thing going for parents.
Right. I, there's something to be said about the saying, we all know that saying, keeping up with the Joneses. It's very much in that vein of things where it's like, oh, they can't know that I'm disabled because then I'll be looked down upon. And you know what? Sure, that does happen. That's going to happen regardless of wherever you are. Somebody's going to look down on somebody with a disability. Unfortunately, that's the reality. But in truth, if you use, if you use what helps you, and if it helps you in a way that gives you the ability to feel like you're moving successfully through the world, why not use it? Why not use the thing that's helping you? You know, I think sometimes too, people with disabilities can sometimes feel like they're disabling themselves further by using the supports that are already granted to them, and that can be a bit of an issue as well. That stigma also is their own can be their own self-inflicted stigma as well. And so, it's not just societal how society is seeing you, it's how you see yourself when using the things that allow you the ability to live a better life.
Yeah, in my life, when I use the things that allow me to live a better life, as you say, I'm able to educate and include people more because I'm not constantly using all my energy trying to go, oh, I gotta hide this from them, I gotta hide that from them. A perfect example, and I know this is getting a little personal, but the use of a male urinal. You
Right.
don't know how many people are so afraid to bring that with them because they don't want people to see.
Right.
And I go to myself, okay, if I get into a bathroom that's not accessible to me, and I mess all over the bathroom,
Right.
what is more embarrassing to me? Taking a little bottle with me to make sure I have that extra security in
Right.
case I can't get into the bathroom the right way, and coming out without a mess versus
Right.
people seeing that. Maybe to me, carrying the little bottle is way less of a stigma than the result.
Yeah. You have to weigh the consequences of your actions for sure.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know. Um uh yeah. And I think also too, you know, we need to, I wouldn't say destigmatize, but we need to educate more and more people about people with disabilities and give them the ability to say, that's just how they do things. That's how they navigate through life. You know, Instead of making it a thing of, oh, you're different, just making it a thing of, oh, that's how you do that. And that's it.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I
I agree.
I would also, uh, in a way, also, I would say that if you're in a situation where you're in a classroom with somebody with a disability, consider yourself lucky because a lot of people don't even get that exposure. A lot of people, I've met people in my life who are grown adults who have never met another person with a disability until they met me.
Yeah,
You know,
me too. Me too.
and, and
They've had
so
no experience at all.
yeah. And so to them, it's a very, eye-opening experience. But if you're a child in a classroom with another child with a disability, they're already getting that exposure. And by virtue of that exposure, it becomes normalized. So,
Yeah,
um, so that's
yeah.
cool.
That's all important.
Yeah. Um, what about you, Lee? Do you have any thoughts on this particular comment?
This is not the life I wanted, and I've been embarrassed from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think all of us have experienced that from time to time and being embarrassed about our life circumstances, given that, it's not always a pleasurable experience being a person with a disability, for sure. I mean, hell, even today, my friend Dan helped me up my driveway because it's icy and snowy here. And, because it was icy and snowy, I couldn't move up my driveway because it was so icy that I was afraid of falling. And thankfully, he was able to grab the back of my coat and, help me navigate up the ice. But even so, that's it's not the most pleasurable of experiences for me. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's embarrassing, but it is a bit annoying to know that I have to rely on someone else to feel safe to move up my driveway when it's icy. But it's
Yeah,
necessary evil.
Yeah, and you know when we talk about these subjects, we never want to mitigate the idea that disability is the greatest thing on the planet.
Yeah, we're not doing
I
that.
don't think anybody's ever saying, "Oh yeah, I every day I never think about my challenges," and you know it's like going down the yellow brick road, um, Candy Apple Lane or
Yeah,
whatever. No, I mean I don't
candy
think there was a
apple.
Candy Apple Lane, but
I was
no,
immediately
not
thinking
not at
Candyland.
all. You know, not at all. If there was one, I would eat the candy apples though.
Yeah,
But but you know, I think you know you have to have a balance there of
yeah,
yes, this is difficult versus look what you can do, you
yeah.
know, along
I
with your challenges.
I would say it's a very fine balance between humility and empowerment. You know,
Sure.
you can be empowered and do something and empower yourself further for sure. But if you need the extra help, if you need the accommodation, if you need that person to help you out, don't be afraid to ask. But don't shortchange yourself by asking for help when you don't really need it.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah. Use your judgment. If you can do it you know, on your own with some good effort, then do that.
Yep.
But if you need help, then you ask. And I think that's what more parents, educators, and just
Yeah.
people in general, family members, people with disabilities.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, even though I've read these comments over and over and over again, but I'm still gonna say it anyway. Um, Parents and also teachers in general. I'm not gonna say that this applies to everybody, but it does help to those with disabilities empower themselves. I would encourage you if the student is if the student is constantly asking for help, encourage them to try. But if they're not, you know, if they're succeeding in the way that they're doing that's helpful to them, let them continue to work it out because the more and more they learn from themselves how to do something, the better off they'll be. Because the difference between helping someone out and actually volunteering their help without asking, that's a whole different story. Because oftentimes I've had in my experience, you know, people will just do things for me instead of asking, hey, do you need help? And that
Yeah.
just turns into a whole
Yeah.
thing because it's not only embarrassing, but it's also like, I'm capable enough to do that. Let me do it for myself, you know? So my rule
Yeah.
of thumb has always been ask me first. And if I say no, back off. If I say yes, then yeah, by all means, please help me, you know?
Yeah. You know, I mean, like you said, there's a fine line between you know, thinking somebody needs help, asking them, and using your judgment about when to ask them. And
Exactly.
what do I mean by that? I mean, like, I remember going to college, sitting there like with the rest of my fellow students before class against the wall, reading a book or boning up on something. And
Mhm.
then somebody would just come out of nowhere walking down the hall. Do you need help? And I was like, well, with what? I was like,
Yeah.
it would shock me. I would be reading a page or something, and then they'd be like, "Do you need help?" I'm like, no, I'm just sitting here reading a book,
Right.
you
Yep.
know. So I think using that judgment of, you know, of when to ask somebody
Yep.
for help
Absolutely.
and
Um,
if they need help.
Absolutely. Lee, do you have any further comments on this, or do you want to move on to the next comment?
No.
Okay, no comments. Okay, cool. Um, all right, so we'll move on to the next comment. Um, so the next comment says this is geared more toward the parents of moderate to severe students with disabilities. I would like parents to know that eventually your child will become an adult with adult consequences. You need to socialize them and teach them conflict resolution and to accept consequences when they are young. I have worked with and seen too many adults in transition centers that resort to violence to get their way because they don't know how to handle hearing no. Once they are 22 and out of the school system, things will become very challenging.
That this is so I don't know. I did a panel one time that included parents, and the some of the parents on the panel were like, "Well, we don't want our child to experience any more pain than they've already experienced." But I think that if you don't prepare your child to hear no, to be rejected every once in a while, because that's going to happen.
That's life.
It's life. They're not going to always be told yes, or not
Mhm.
everybody in the world is going to like them. That's
Mhm.
just reality, and you have to take those instances where that happens as a teachable moment for them to say,
Absolutely.
hey, still keep your head up, or you can do it in spite of what these people have said to you or done to you, not just say yes to them because you feel bad, or feel bad that they have a disability. Then that's not going to work. It
Absolutely.
just isn't going to work. You have to give them opportunities to rise.
Yep. And also give them options to fail as well. If you don't give them
Yeah.
the dignity to fail, then you're depriving them the ability to learn and grow. And I'm sorry, I will say this as somebody who's experienced a variety of people with disabilities with a variety of backgrounds. I've seen it way too much where it's often parents who enable their child with a disability and never allow them the ability to fail. And that's unfortunate because it deprives them an experience of, hey, I can become stronger or I can overcome this. And so they just end up getting stuck where they are.
And it's not even about the the failing option per se.
Yeah.
Because let's take a look at that. Because if you deprive somebody of the chance to fail, you deprive them of the chance to succeed, because then they don't try things. You don't give them a chance to what is said in the system to um, to
Have the
take
dignity of
risks.
risk.
You know, dignity of risk. Take a risk, try it, see
Yep.
if it works. If it doesn't, well, then you can either try it a different way or try something else. But if you keep saying, "Oh, I don't want my person to fail," that means you don't want them to take chances.
Yep. And just to be clear, I mean, we understand also, all of us here on this podcast understand that there are levels of cognitive ability where some people understand and some people don't. And we understand that too. However, you're never really going to know if that person with a certain cognitive disability is going to be able to understand the situation if you don't present it to them in the first place. So you have to be able to be willing to present that situation. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, many people I know that have intellectual disabilities are very shortchanged a lot of times because people just don't think they can do it. And they're capable of doing those things.
yep,
They're
yep,
capable of that.
yep. I and I also want to be clear. We're not using this podcast to beat up on parents or care providers, people that provide support. That's not the point here. We're just trying to provide perspective because we want other people with disabilities to be as empowered, if not more so, than we are today. And the only way that we became as empowered as we are today is by facing opposition to a certain degree. Yes, we're all supported, but we also face our own oppositions that allowed us the ability to grow stronger.
Yeah, I mean, we're not saying it's easy for a parent when they have to face challenges with their child or
Yeah.
with somebody that they love. No, that's not easy. But enjoy the successes.
Yep.
If you don't try to do things, and if you don't push yourselves, both as parents and people with disabilities, you're never going to enjoy that success. You're
Absolutely.
never going to see what the possibilities are.
Right. Let them grow to their potential,
Yeah.
support them in growing in their potential for sure. Protect them, give them love, give them support, but don't deny them the ability to grow by hovering over them because that's never going to make that work. So,
Yeah, and at the same time, don't over expect either. Don't try to compensate for the disability to the point where you you're you're expending so much effort to make them overcome something that they are,
right.
that 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 they don't reach the potential that they can. You know, um, you know, as a person with a disability, I use crutches, but I know I'm not going to run a marathon. That's just not going to happen.
Hmm.
I mean, we have to accept some realities, and but support them in ways that they can do things.
Yep.
It may not be what you expected them to be in life or what they expected, but
Hmm.
that's the way life is. It's surprising.
Yeah, it's a fine line too. And I can already feel it in the back of my brain. Some parents being like, "Well, if we can't support them because it's disabling them further, or try or hovering too much, which is causing them issue. How do we support them?" And it's a fine line. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own capacity for what they need help with. But again, without those challenges, they never know their own strength. So I would encourage you to, you know, help them rise to the occasion, help them when they're uh, listen to them when they're frustrated about something, but help them work through it. But give them the opportunity to work through it for themselves, because that's the important part.
One thing that I will always say that I learned from my mother, who has left this world. But
Mm,
one lesson that she taught me over the years, without even saying that much, is she didn't have a lot of the answers,
mm-hmm,
because I was asking big questions like, when are people going to accept me the way they should, blah blah blah, big philosophical questions, or why aren't they hiring me, or she didn't have those answers, but she didn't claim to have them either, or go after them in a way that I have to fix it. No, she was more like supporting me in everything I tried to do, and hoping that things worked out like most people do in life.
mm-hmm,
And that kind of attitude helped, because I went out and tried all the different things that I tried
mm-hmm.
over the years. And I've had great successes with a lot of it.
Yep. And you've done really well, Mike, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. I've had employment in ways I would have never thought. If somebody said, "Oh, I'm just gonna try to find the solution with you," or "No, don't try that. You won't be able to do it." I tried it, and sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. There were things that prevented me, and there was mindsets that
Mm-hmm.
prevented me from societal people. So, but I was successful at a lot of those jobs, and and different things that I did, and it was all because somebody didn't say no, don't do that.
Absolutely. Um, Lee,
Without
do
taking
you
risks, you're never going to be able to succeed.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
And that's with or without supports. I mean, honestly, that's the truth of the matter.
yeah,
Supports are great, when you need the support to say, I don't know if I can get up again. Those supports are going to say, well, we're here to listen to what you have to say, but you need to get up for yourself. You know?
Yeah. And just the support of saying we're here to listen.
Yep.
We don't know how to answer everything, but we know it's got to be difficult, and we're here to listen. We
Yep.
we're present with you.
Yep.
You know.
Um, in relation to that one comment as well, the comment we just talked about, somebody had commented, yes, I work with elementary students and have to frequently remind my staff that, quote unquote, if it's not cute at 16, it's not cute at 6. The tiny kindergarten student trying to climb your legs during a tantrum might be adorable now, but we need to teach him how to handle, quote unquote, no now before he's a full grown man size and throwing himself bodily at caregivers because he wants more iPad time. Again, we understand that. And yes, people with disabilities need to learn the word no. They need to learn rejection. They need to learn how to handle situations that may not always go their way, you know? And also, I've come across a couple people with disabilities in my lifetime where they will just get extraordinarily angry at their staff because their staff doesn't want to do something or doesn't want to uh, assist them in a way that they know that that person can do something, and they just become angry. And it's like, you're an adult, you cannot treat people that way, whether you're a person with a disability or not. That's not the issue here. The issue here is you treat people with dignity and respect regardless of your status.
Oh yeah, that goes both ways. People with disabilities should not be treating people with disrespect just because they don't get something their way because of their disability. You
Exactly.
know, and but at the same time, though, I want to bring up the fact that people with sensory disabilities, maybe like autism or something like that. A lot of times, people will talk about behavior, and there's behavior analysis, and that's all well and good.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are needed, but some you know in conversations that I've had and in just dealing with people with different disabilities, taking the time to listen, taking
Mm-hmm.
the time to see what might be causing the difficulty, what might be causing them to act out,
Mm-hmm.
as the system might say, because a lot of times it might be them communicating things that they need or are not
Mm-hmm.
right, and a lot of times, we just go right to saying, "Oh, that's a behavior," when a lot of times it's their way of communicating. Think
Mm-hmm.
if you couldn't communicate in the way you regularly do,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what would your communication be?
Right.
So I think there's a lot of dynamics to this. Is that yes, yeah, a person needs to be act a certain way because you can't be yelling at everybody or having tantrums to get your way, but also taking that time to see what might be causing that, and not just saying, oh, it's because of their disability that it's happening like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think
But
sometimes
I
people
think that's a great dynamic.
absolutely. I think also some people like to use the disability, whether it's the person that has the disability or the caregiver, they like to kind of use the disability as a scapegoat to say, oh, well, you can't do that. So I'll just do it for you or whatever. And again, you're not helping anybody by doing that. Um,
No, no, you should work with the person to be the best person that they can be,
yeah, regardless of the
um,
disability, for sure.
regardless of it, and giving them the chance to thrive in whatever way that they can.
Yeah.
And when they really need the help, then give them the help.
Yeah.
As a person with a physical disability, there are just some things that I can't do, and I receive help to do those things.
Nope.
The same thing with Alex and Lee, but if we can do them, we can do them. Not
Absolutely.
now, if it's going to take me 3 hours to do it and I don't have 3 hours, then help me do it.
For
But,
sure.
but, so that's where you have to have that interaction with the person to see what is the best way to do things, and that's talking to them or listening to them in whatever way they communicate.
Yeah, and having the experience of understanding them at a level that they, have an understanding of what they need. Um, and just having that discretion, treating treating both people with honor and respect for what they need and how they do things. Um, some of the things that I do around my house on a daily basis may not be great for other people that are able-bodied, but they work for me. So that's the important part, you know. So I think that's a good way to go about it. Lee, do you have any thoughts on this matter?
Put yourself in their shoes.
Absolutely, for sure. Put
Yeah,
yourself put yourself in their shoes, but also vice versa. Also, person with a disability, put yourself in your support shoes as well.
yeah, yeah,
Because it
yeah,
goes both ways.
yeah. But it does. You
Yeah.
know, and you know, and I'll always say this, and almost every podcast that we do, and because I think yes, we want people with disabilities to adapt in whatever way they can, but also I think that I think that society has to start to admit that people with disabilities want to live, and like a good example of that, for many years we a lot of us were put in like um disability focused schools. Many times we were put in special ed classes, and now it's becoming more and more prevalent that people get the help they need in the actual class environment with those without disabilities.
Yep.
And, and I think that's great because from what I've heard in dealing with, um, people with disabilities in schools and different things, is that that gets a chance for the kids without disabilities to respect the kids with disabilities for their challenges and what they need, and also
For who they
help
are.
help them.
Yeah. And also respect them for who they are because, it's not just about what they do or how they interact with the world, but who they are as people, you know, because
Yeah,
kids
interact with them,
kids
get
are
to
the
know them.
fat kids are the fastest to see a person for who they are rather than for what they do. But they need that exposure in order to see that.
Yeah, yeah, you have to interact with someone to get to know them.
Yep.
Just in life in general, if you don't do that, then that creates division.
Yep. Yeah. And especially we especially live today in a world where more and more people are being diagnosed with like ADHD or are diagnosed with being on the spectrum, things like that. And so there are so many different ways by which people are interacting in the world today with various disabilities, whether they're physical or non-visible, it doesn't matter. And the truth of the matter is, I mean, the more people interact with each other on a variety of levels, the more people can see, the more they're exposed to, the more normal disabilities become in their world, and that's the important part.
Yeah, um, and then your disability doesn't isn't as disabling when you interact with the
Exactly.
rest of society in a way that you benefit each other. You don't notice disability all the time because disability is created by people's biases and
Right.
people's fears and things not being accessible. Well, if you want somebody there, then society will work more to make it accessible for them to be there.
Yep.
It
I,
sounds simple, but in a complex way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell a really quick story and then we can go on to the last comment. I had a friend, Jen, in high school, and she became one of my best friends. And the thing is, Jen was awesome. She was amazing. Her personality shined like no tomorrow, and I love her even to this day. And she'll forever be in my heart. However, the thing with my friend Jen, is that my friend Jen had one leg. She was an amputee and she walked with crutches. But even with her physical disability, you would never think, oh, there's Jen, that disabled girl with one leg. Because the way she went about her life, the way she did things, the way she interacted with people, you would never think, oh, this person before me is disabled. Like, because her personality, her presence, the way she interacted with people was so strong that it just doesn't really register all that strongly that, oh, this person's actually a person with a disability, because she was so empowered that she outshone her disability, even though it was very plainly physical. Like, nobody remembers Jen as the girl with the disability. They remember Jen for who she was as a person. And that's really, really awesome. She was funny, she was artistic, she was she was everything. She's one of my best friends and I miss her so much. But yeah, yeah. So Lee, did you have any further comments about that last comment before we move on?
No.
Okay. So on to the last comment of the post. Um, I think it's important, but sometimes hard for parents, especially, to realize that special ed services can mitigate the educational effects of various disabilities, but rarely can they completely cancel the effects that those disabilities have. Sometimes because the state of research in the field of special ed is not as fully developed as we'd hoped it would will be someday, and sometimes because the disability itself sets those limits. That doesn't mean that we settle for merely okay progress, but it does mean that there are no magic bullets and that I'm sorry, but it does mean that there are no magic bullets that make school progress ideal for every child all the time. And I think that's kind of universal, honestly. Like, regardless of the amount of education, science, understanding of disabilities, there's always going to be something that's a little bit tricky. Situations are a little bit tricky that don't always cancel out the disability itself. I understand that. Um, However, it's not about canceling out the disability. Also, I want to make that clear. We're not talking about making whitewashing disability to a point where it's not visible anymore. If anything, we're saying the opposite. Embrace the disability, but by embracing the disability, you make it less of a disability because you learn how to move through life with the disability instead of fighting against it constantly.
Yeah, a good example for me, Alex, is when I was going to college. The ADA was first coming into use in like 1995 or six when I was going to college.
Yep.
They, you know, I, I didn't know how to navigate the college life at first, right? So, you know, I probably could have got more supports than I did just because I didn't know how to ask the right questions,
Right.
you know. But what I did was I knew things would take me longer, so I got things like a laptop where I could, you know, sit sit with a pillow on my bed and with that laptop till 2, 3 in the morning writing that paper. Was it convenient? No. But I knew in order to pass, I had to write that paper.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so I put in the effort to do that. Right. So I think, yes, getting all the accommodations that you can get, you should get them. But that's not going to take away the need for both the person with the disability and the parent putting in that extra effort because that's maybe what it's going to take.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, part of I would say part of my disability is, yes, I have cerebral palsy and it does affect me in a physical way. However, beyond that, it does affect also my concept of time. Something that would take, an able-bodied person 5 minutes might take me 10, 15, 20 minutes because I move a little differently. I might move a little slower. I might move in a way that isn't as expedient as an able-bodied person. But the way I compensate for that is by, getting up earlier or, you know, going to an appointment earlier than what I should, things like that. Managing my time so that even with my disability, I still show up when I need to show up, or do the thing I need to do within the amount of time that I'm given. So, and I realize
Yes.
that's not always affordable, but it is something that I'm able to do in order to compensate for the fact that I have a disability, which is, by the way, my responsibility, not the support not the support's responsibility, my responsibility as a person with a disability, because my disability is not the world's problem. Their acceptance of my disability is part of the problem for the world, but my disability is my problem.
And that makes me think, um, Alex, about the idea of people can't support you unless they know what you need. Like
Exactly.
if if they need to make up a calendar or a schedule or a reminder for you so that you get up on time and
Mhm.
that you get to that appointment, you have to be willing to tell them that you need that support, you
and
know.
to, and to build that relationship with that person, that support, that's a huge part of it, because by building that support, by building that relationship, we can establish those things, but we need to be able to do that together.
Yeah, and that's why I think the systems are failing a little bit in the fact that there are so many things to prevent abuse, which I totally agree with. I'm not saying that we shouldn't put things in place so that people stay safe and not abused and not taken advantage of. But we need to be able to build relationships with the people that support us so that they're invested in what we do
Yeah,
and
exactly.
in who we are.
And too often there's a lot of situations where, situations that the people that are in power will make certain stipulations about people with disability in their lives, but never actually consult a person with a disability about that. So, it makes we need to work together, both able-bodied people and people with disabilities, in order to create a better world. It's not just able-bodied people compensating for the lack of ability that disabled people have. It's it's able-bodied people and disabled people working together to work with each other in order to build a better world. That is the
Yes,
idea.
yes, and I'm going to be a little bit um biased in a way with this comment,
Yeah,
in the fact that able-bodied people have to want our success and want us there. It's
right,
not just laws that need to be created to make sure that we have certain things as people with disabilities, but in my ideal life, I would want somebody to want that to happen for me, whether there was a law about it or not.
right.
You have to want success for somebody to be able to be involved in their success.
Right, and vice versa. I want
Yes,
able-bodied people. I want my able-bodied friends and family and everybody else to succeed as much as I want
sure.
my my friends with disabilities to succeed. It's the same way. Vice versa. Lee, what are your thoughts on this particular section of this? Also, as Lee's typing, I just thought of something too. We also have to talk about what is realistic to the situation for every person, regardless of whatever. No situation is ever going to be universal for any one person. You know, it's never going to be a widespread umbrella of this is the universal solution for people with CP or whatever.
No comment.
You don't have a, okay, that's fine. But um, I think we just need to discuss that every person with a disability, regardless of the fact of whether they have the same disability or not, doesn't matter. Every single person with a disability has their own unique way of going about things. Or if they don't know about it, they should at least try. So all I'm saying is that like fingerprints, every situation is different. Every situation is different. So everybody needs to figure out a way to make things work for themselves.
Yeah, and that's where building the relationships, whatever relationship, parent to child, parent to educator, educator to person with a disability, people with disabilities going the opposite way.
Yep,
That's why it's needed, because no person is like, I have CP and Alex has CP, and it affects us totally different in a
absolutely,
lot of ways.
absolutely, absolutely.
So
But
you're never going to get a cookie cutter answer. It's
absolutely.
something that, yeah.
Also, I would like to extend the opportunity for feedback, guys. If you guys have any feedback about the things we're saying on these podcasts, please feel free to email us for sure, or reach out to us through our website, ostbwny.com. Feel free to reach out and let us know how you feel about what we're saying.
Yeah,
We would love to hear more of
definitely,
your feedback for sure. I would love
definitely.
to know that. Um, you know. But that said, that is what we have. That's what we have for today. Lee, do you have any other comments? Anything you want to add?
No.
Okay, Mike, how about you? Anything? Any last words?
No, I think we're good. I think we're good.
Okay.
So please like and subscribe to our content, and
Yes.
we
Yes.
hope that you enjoyed this. This was a very interesting conversation, and
Yes.
please come back. We have a whole catalog of episodes.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk with you more about other topics for sure. You all have a great night. We'll talk soon.
Bye bye.